The tension in the federal courthouse was palpable that morning. Judge Harrison's reputation for targeting conservative defendants was well known, but today his behavior was particularly disturbing. "How many times do I have to say it?" he yelled at the bailiff. "In my courtroom, the thermostat stays at 67 degrees, not a fraction higher. If anyone's cold, they can bring a coat." Then he turned to the court reporter and told her if she couldn't type faster, he'd replace her by lunch. His arbitrary demands had the entire staff walking on eggshells. The packed gallery watched as Harrison entered, already bristling with barely contained anger. "Clear those front rows," he barked, pointing at several elderly conservative supporters. "I want them at the back where I don't have to see their Trump pins." His abuse of power was obvious, but no one dared challenge him, until today. "Your Honor," his assistant interrupted nervously, "Attorney General Bondi is here to represent the defense." Harrison's face twisted into a sneer. "Oh, perfect, another blonde conservative princess trying to play lawyer in my courtroom." He adjusted his robe with obvious irritation. "And what's next? Will she quote the Constitution at me?" Several liberal attorneys chuckled sycophantically at his remarks. The atmosphere changed when Pam Bondi walked in. Her presence commanded respect, but Harrison only saw another target. "Listen carefully, Miss Bondi," he emphasized her name with mocking condescension. "Your title of Attorney General means nothing here. In my courtroom, looking pretty and quoting the Bible won't help your client." Bondi remained admirably composed. "I'm here to present evidence and seek justice, Your Honor. Nothing more, nothing less." "Evidence?" Harrison laughed derisively. "Let me guess, more conservative conspiracy theories." He leaned forward, his voice dripping with disdain. "I've crushed better attorneys than you, Miss Bondi. Much better ones. But please, do entertain us with your, evidence." The ghost of a smile played across Bondi's lips as she opened her briefcase. Whatever was coming, Judge Harrison had no idea this seemingly routine hearing was about to become the most important case of his career. The defense attorney began his opening statement. "Your Honor, we're here today because my client, Mrs. Henderson, a respected small business owner who also runs a charitable foundation." "Skip the character references," Harrison interrupted sharply. "She's charged with fraud. That's all that matters here." "Your Honor," the attorney persisted, "Mrs. Henderson's 20-year history of charitable work is directly relevant to." "I said skip it." Harrison's gavel crashed down. "I won't have my courtroom turned into a conservative sob story about family values and church donations." Bondi rose slowly from her chair. "Your Honor, if I may, the nature of Mrs. Henderson's business and her community involvement are central to understanding." "Oh, I understand plenty, Miss Bondi," Harrison sneered, emphasizing her name with obvious disdain. "I understand that you conservatives think you can hide fraud behind a veil of religious charity. Not in my courtroom. The evidence will show," Bondi continued calmly, "that every transaction in question was fully documented and properly." "Properly what?" Harrison leaned forward, his face reddening. "Properly hidden, properly manipulated. I've seen enough of these cases to know exactly what's going on here." "Have you, Your Honor?" Something in Bondi's tone made Harrison pause. "And how many exactly would that be?" The judge's fingers tightened on his gavel. "Watch yourself, Miss Bondi. You're dangerously close to contempt." Bondi held his gaze steadily as she opened her first exhibit. The slight tremor in Harrison's hand as he reached for his water glass didn't escape her notice. "Exhibit A, Your Honor." Bondi gestured to the document display. "Bank statements showing Mrs. Henderson's charitable foundation received all funds through proper channels." "Objection." The prosecutor jumped up. "These documents weren't properly submitted during discovery." A thin smile crossed Harrison's face. Well, trying to sneak in evidence, Miss Bondi. I expected better, even from a conservative." "Page 47 of the discovery files, Your Honor," Bondi interrupted smoothly, producing a signed receipt. "Submitted and acknowledged by your office 3 weeks ago." Harrison's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. I personally reviewed all discovery documents and never saw." "Perhaps," Bondi suggested quietly, "you should ask your clerk about the files that arrived on March 15. The clerk's face went pale. Harrison shot her a warning glare before turning back to Bondi. "These documents are inadmissible. I don't care what receipts you have." "On what grounds, Your Honor?" "Because I said so." Harrison's voice echoed through the courtroom. "I am the judge here, or have you forgotten that in your eagerness to grandstand?" "I haven't forgotten anything, Your Honor," Bondi replied, her emphasis on the last two words making Harrison's face darken. including the federal rules of evidence, which clearly state, "You dare lecture me about the law." Harrison was practically shaking now. "I've been on this bench longer than you've been playing attorney, Miss Bondi. One more word, and I'll have you removed from my courtroom." The gallery stirred uncomfortably. Even the prosecutor seemed disturbed by the judge's outburst. But Bondi remained unruffled as she reached for another document. "Before you do that, Your Honor, you might want to take a look at Exhibit B." Something about her tone made Harrison freeze, his hand halfway to his gavel. "Your Honor," Bondi began methodically laying out her documents, "the financial records clearly show, stand up straight when you address my court." Harrison snapped, though Bondi's posture was impeccable. "And speak clearly. I won't have any of your legal wordplay here. As I was saying," Bondi continued steadily, "these records demonstrate that every transaction—" "Let me make something very clear, Miss Bondi." Harrison leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous tone. "In this courtroom, I decide what evidence is heard and what isn't. I decide what matters and what doesn't. I am the law here. Is that clear enough for you?" "Crystal clear, Your Honor. However, the federal rules of evidence state, the rules of evidence." Harrison let out a harsh laugh. "Don't you dare lecture me about the law in my own courtroom. I've forgotten more about law than you'll ever know." The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably as Harrison continued. "In fact, one more word about rules or procedures, and you'll be joining your client in contempt." "That's not a threat, Miss Bondi, that's a promise." "Your Honor." Bondi remained composed. "Are you threatening to imprison an attorney general for presenting evidence in court?" Harrison's face contorted with rage. "Attorney General, in here, you're just another lawyer who doesn't know her place. One more word out of line, and I'll have the bailiff clear this entire courtroom." "Try me." The gallery watched in tense silence as Bondi calmly reached for a particular document. "Then perhaps, Your Honor, you should see this before making that decision." Harrison's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you defying my authority, Miss Bondi? Because I promise you, you won't like what happens next." "Before we proceed," Bondi began calmly, "I'd like to address the court's recent pattern." Pattern?" Harrison slammed his gavel down. "The only pattern I see is you wasting this court's time. Now sit down, or I'll have you removed." "Your Honor." Bondi remained standing. "The defense has the right to rights." Harrison's voice took on a dangerous edge. "Let me explain something about rights in my courtroom, Miss Bondi. I decide who speaks. I decide who stays. I decide what evidence is heard. And right now, I'm deciding that you're in contempt." The gallery stirred as Harrison continued. "Officers, remove Miss Bondi from my courtroom. Now." The court officers hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Something about this didn't feel right. "Did you hear me?" Harrison's voice rose. "I gave you an order. Are you questioning my authority too?" "Your Honor," Bondi interjected, her voice cutting through the tension, "before you have me removed, you might want to consider the implications of a federal judge ordering the arrest of an attorney general in open court without cause." "Without cause?" Harrison's laugh was almost maniacal. "I am the cause. My word is law in this courtroom. Officers, I'm ordering you one last time. Actually, Your Honor." Bondi's calm voice seemed to drop the temperature in the room by 10 degrees, "There's something else you should know about orders in your courtroom." Harrison's hand froze midair, his gavel trembling slightly as he noticed Bondi's hand resting on a sealed envelope he hadn't seen before. "Ms. Bondi," Harrison's voice dripped with venom, "I'm giving you one last chance to submit to my authority before I have you dragged out of here in handcuffs." "Interesting choice of words, Your Honor," Bondi replied, her composure unwavering. "Authority. Let's discuss that." "There's nothing to discuss." Harrison's gavel crashed down again. "I've made my ruling." "Have you, Your Honor?" Bondi asked quietly. "Because I don't recall you actually ruling on the evidence. You seem more interested in making threats than reviewing facts." Harrison's face contorted with rage. "How dare you question your authority? Yes, we've established that's your primary concern." Bondi's tone remained professional but took on an edge that made Harrison pause. "But let's talk about Mrs. Henderson's case, the actual facts that you're so desperate to avoid." "I'm not avoiding anything," Harrison snarled, but his eyes kept darting to the envelope on Bondi's desk. "Then you won't mind explaining why every piece of exculpatory evidence in this case mysteriously disappeared from the court records?" Bondi lifted a document. "Or why certain financial records were sealed without cause?" "Those files were sealed under my authority." Harrison's voice rose dangerously. "I am the law here. No one is above me in this courtroom. The gallery gasped at his outburst. Even the prosecutor looked shocked. But Bondi remained calm, watching as Harrison revealed more of himself than he intended. Tell me, Your Honor, Bondi continued steadily, why are you so fixated on power rather than justice? The judge's face turned an alarming shade of purple. Officers, I want her removed from my courtroom this instant. Anyone who doesn't comply will be held in contempt. But the officers remained rooted in place, their eyes fixed on the document Bondi was now slowly removing from that envelope. I'll tell you what that envelope contains, Harrison snarled, trying to regain control. More baseless accusations from another conservative troublemaker. Actually, Your Honor, Bondi's calm voice cut through his bluster, these are the original documents from Mrs. Henderson's case, the ones that mysteriously vanished from court records last week. Harrison's face flickered. That's impossible. Those files were, he caught himself, but too late. Were what, Your Honor? Bondi pressed. Destroyed, sealed, or perhaps moved to that special filing cabinet in your private chambers. You have no right to question my filing procedures, Harrison's voice cracked slightly. I run this court as I see fit. Including, Bondi continued steadily, deciding which evidence disappears and which cases get dismissed. Harrison slammed both hands on his bench. One more word, Miss Bondi, and I'll have you disbarred. I have friends in high places, connections you couldn't imagine. Interesting you should mention connections, Your Honor. Bondi's subtle emphasis on the last two words made Harrison's face drain of color. Would you like to tell the court about your meeting last Thursday night? The gavel trembled in Harrison's hand. What meeting? You're delusional. The one in the parking garage of the Liberty Building. 3rd floor. 11:47 p.m. Bondi's precise details made Harrison's eyes go wide. Or should we wait for the surveillance footage? You're spying on me. Harrison's voice rose to a shriek. This is illegal. Officers, arrest her immediately. But the officers still hadn't moved, and Harrison's panic only grew as Bondi calmly placed a series of photographs on the evidence table. These photographs, Bondi began methodically arranging them, tell quite an interesting story. I will not be blackmailed in my own courtroom. Harrison was practically foaming at the mouth now. Officers, remove those photos immediately. That's an order. Blackmail, Your Honor. Bondi's eyebrow raised slightly. These are simply evidence of public meetings, unless there's something in these photos you don't want the court to see. Harrison's eyes darted frantically between the photos and his chambers. This is all fabricated. A conservative plot. Bondi's voice remained steady, like the plot to destroy Mrs. Henderson's evidence, or perhaps like the plot to seal documents in the Williams case last month. Those cases are sealed, Harrison's voice cracked with panic. You have no right to. Actually, Your Honor, as Attorney General, I have every right to investigate a pattern of judicial misconduct, especially when that pattern involves systematic targeting of conservative defendants. The color drained from Harrison's face. You've been investigating me. Not just you, Your Honor. Bondi placed another photo on the table. Would you like to explain to the court why 6 other federal judges were present at that garage meeting? Harrison's hand trembled as he reached for his water glass. This is inadmissible. All of it. I'm ordering these documents sealed immediately. You can't seal what's already been logged into federal evidence, Your Honor. Bondi's words hit Harrison like physical blows. In fact, everything happening in this courtroom right now is being recorded and transmitted directly to the Department of Justice. Harrison's eyes darted wildly around the courtroom, looking for escape. Department of Justice, you can't investigate a federal judge without proper authorization. Bondi held up another document. Signed 3 months ago, when we first noticed the pattern of cases being mysteriously sealed in your court. This is a setup. Harrison's voice was becoming unhinged. A politically motivated witch hunt. I am a federal judge. You can't what, Your Honor? Bondi cut him off. Can't expose how you've been systematically destroying evidence. Can't reveal how you've been coordinating with other corrupt judges to target conservative defendants. Lies. Harrison screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. You have no proof. No. Bondi's calm voice cut through his hysteria. We have. Your own words, Your Honor. Every threat you made to witnesses. Every order to destroy evidence. Every late-night meeting in that parking garage, all recorded.